In at number 10, we have the Castaroides, and most people probably wouldn't consider this a great underwater tame, but when you think of it, it kind of does make sense considering that this is a beaver, and it actually is pretty good underwater. Although if you're not really a fan of this creature, just pretend I'm talking about the carb enemies here, as that is another great creature at this early stage of the game, albeit the carb enemies you can unlock at an earlier stage in terms of its saddle level compared to the Castaroides, but the Castaroides has a smithy as its saddle, so if you're going into deep depths of the ocean you can repair some stuff, which is nice. I wouldn't really usually take them that far, but I have before, and it works as long as you have a good enough melee weapon on yourself to actually deal that damage, because they don't really deal a very high amount of damage compared to some of the other creatures on this list, but they definitely are a great shout in, again, those early to mid game stages of the game when there really just isn't anything better or more accessible, because getting to the ocean can be a pretty scary thing and daunting, especially for new players, although it could also be a very exciting thing. You just get in there and you tame something like a megalodon instantly, but you know, it just kind of depends what type of player you are, really. Next up, we have the Beelzebufo, and another creature which you would kind of expect to be great in the water, but some people may not see instantly as just, oh yeah, this is a great underwater tame. And actually, the main use for this creature isn't its swimming, but I personally think that it does really excel in this category, considering it is a very fast and agile swimmer. Again, damage is something which it just can't do. It just can't really do any kind of damage. If underwater insects were a thing though, it would be amazing. Not like it can't do any damage though. It definitely can inflict something, and it can work efficiently in those scenarios, but it's mainly just for getting from A to B, and they're just so quick and agile in the water, you really can't take them out of this list, as sometimes you want a creature which can deal loads of damage, but they tend to be a lot slower than the creatures which are just really speedy and can't do a lot of damage, and it depends what you need for any scenario. If I'm just traveling around the ocean, I may take one of these things as they're small, very easily portable. I know cryos exist, so pretty much every creature is portable, but this one especially because it can fit through any kind of dino gate, and it's really small and it's really quick and surprisingly efficient underwater. Next up, we've got the Spino, and this definitely is a very underrated creature in my opinion for underwater travel, as you probably wouldn't think of using one, but if you ever do use one of these things for underwater travel, you realise how good they are. They're fast, they're agile, they have that hydration buff, which really does play a huge part in these creatures being great underwater, as that is a buff which makes their damage just so much more effective. Like on land, yeah, they deal loads of damage and they're a great carnivore even for bosses, but you take that into the water and it's buffed even more. It's just an insane ability to have. Not sure if they have oxygen, because I think they didn't used to and now they do, but I'm pretty sure the drain is just so slow, it's not going to affect you either way, and you're going to be totally fine with that drain, no issues whatsoever. Either way, every time I've used a Spino underwater, you can see it kind of being used here, that oxygen has not been an issue. And if you did want to do the underwater caves with these things on a map like the island, it could be a great shout, as it can easily kill things like Moses and Plesios and those kind of creatures, and also Dunkleostuses as well, which can be a little bit of a pain because they're quite armored, but it will shred through them easily and quickly, and it's really an efficient creature in underwater scenarios. But the only real downside is its size. It's quite a big creature to be taking underwater, which, you know, could play to your benefit because you're trying to deal loads of damage, but sometimes it's not really quite what you want, and you might want a bit of a smaller carnivore like the next creature which is on this list. But it still has huge amounts of value underwater, and if you've never used one before in the ocean of any Ark map, I would definitely advise that you tame yourself a Spino and get into the ocean depths. In at number 7, we've got the Baryonyx. But why is this better than the Spinos? You might think Spino bigger, just better version of the Baryonyx, really. Well, the main thing is due to its size and agility and mobility. I vastly prefer it over the Spinos underwater. Again, Spino, a great underwater creature, but this would be more my go-to, and especially with the underwater caves on a map like the island. And ASA is a great example here because it only really has the island. I know Svartalfheim is there as well, but most people are just playing the island. The Baryonyx is a great shout, and it is so convenient for getting down there, and especially considering it has a special ability as well, which underwater doesn't work on land, but if you right click on your mouse it will do a spin attack, and it can stun creatures up to the size of a megalodon, making it a very great creature for combat underwater as well, because it deals a significant amount of damage and she has a pretty high health stat. And again, with that mobility, they're very useful underwater, and the fact that you can stun a creature like the megalodon, nothing bigger, obviously Moses and Plesios, that's not going to happen, but like it's just such a cool and nice little ability to have, which really gives you a kind of blanket of protection underwater, as you can quickly get away from any threats that are megalodon sized or smaller if need be. Next up, we've got the Ichthyosaurus, and it did really have to be on this list at some point, didn't it? When you think of this as pretty much one of the best creatures for getting around the ocean biome in Ark, it's just one of those creatures which is fantastic, amazing, and I don't know. This creature, there's just so much about it which makes it very appealing, especially for your first like proper underwater tame, Castoroides, carb enemies aside, as they're passive tame and they often don't spawn in the ocean depths. I'm pretty sure they don't even spawn, but they spawn, well they do spawn, but they don't spawn in the depths of the ocean. They spawn on coastlines, and if you just get a little bit of, I think even normal meat works, and go up to it and just passive feed them, just gradually, especially because you've got taming tracker now, you can just chuck that on after you put the first beat of meat into them, and then you can just track them, and then whenever you're ready to put that second piece of meat in, then go for it, put that next piece of meat in, and just keep doing that, and then you've got yourself one of these things. Just park it in one of Ark's many bays which you'll find, and then craft yourself a saddle and get out there into the ocean, and it really is a huge gateway into the water. And you can always take it out to the surface here like I'm doing, because I didn't even know this thing was pink, but now I do. Lovely pink coloured Ichthyosaurus. In at number 5, we've got the Moser, and this creature definitely did have to be on this list, and especially with X-Mosers, it's just an even better creature now. It's just, man, the Moser is one of the most hard-hitting ocean creatures, and it does have a platform saddle as well, although I don't really find that to be the most useful out there, because, you know, I don't really need an underwater base. I can always just build in any underwater caves if I need one, and I don't need a mobile base on the back of a mosasaur. So I never really used that platform saddle, and also I always find my platform saddles on creatures like Mosers and Titanosaurs and Brontos, and sometimes even Quetzals when you build a base on the back of them, that you just really can't see anything, and I like to be able to see a lot around me. But X-Mosers on Gen 1, you can really get so much use out of the Mosasaurus, and they just deal so much damage, and great for the Moda boss fight on that map too, but just great for killing anything underwater if that's your thing. Next up, we have got the Megalodon, and I think that this creature definitely does have to be put on the list here for great ocean creatures, as it is a ridiculously easy to tame on underwater, on any map, on underwater, in an underwater scenario, on any map. These things are so easy, especially X-Megalodons. I know this is slightly harder to tame, and it's on the Gen 1 ocean, so there's a lot more eels around, but still, if you have Gen 1, go for an X-Megalodon on that map. You will not be unhappy with that tame, because they're so easy, even on any map, just no matter the map. Yes, X1's a little bit harder, they're just so easy to tame. Again, quite a good introduction after you tame yourself an Ichthyosaurus. Get yourself a harpoon launcher, get yourself some trank harpoon thingy majigs, or you can even just use a crossbow and trank arrows if you want as well. Harpoon launcher is the kind of more, you know, utilized one in my opinion. It makes it slightly easier, although crossbows work fine. And you have your creature which can deal a huge amount of bleed damage, which is really great, and it deals so much damage for how easy it is to tame compared to a creature like the Moser. In at number 3, we have the Shadowmane, and this creature is just so great in the water, and again, you might not expect it to be, but considering its damage and that hydration buff shared with the Spino, it's just an even more buff underwater creature. And what makes it better than the Spino is it is smaller and more agile, which really does benefit it in any underwater scenarios. You can get out anywhere really quickly, and again, really portable, and you might just be using this mount to generally travel around the map, whereas with a Spino, you might only be using that for underwater stuff, and then when you take it onto the surface, you have a different creature, like a Thyla is quite a common one. If you take the Thyla underwater, well, you can, but if it was really good underwater, then that would be a huge benefit, but the Shadowmane is kind of replacing it there. Although the Thyla was never good in water, but you can see how good the Shadowmane is in water, and considering it is a lionfish lion and you tame it with fish, it does make sense that it'd be great underwater. But it really is a terrific underwater tame, and if you haven't already, definitely go out and tame yourself with Shadowmane and test it underwater. You will not be displeased with the results, apart from the actual taming method being a pain. In at number 2 we have the Basilosaurus, and the reason why this is on the list is pretty self-explanatory. It's quite easy water tame, again being a passive tame. The only difficulty is getting rid of all of the mantas which are around it, but then afterwards you have a creature which is immune to eel and jellyfish, which is an insane feat to have, and no other creatures have it at the moment. The Basilosaurus will, but that's not being added until March. Sadly it does have a depth limit, but that's not really the worst thing, and if you're on the island you won't really encounter that when going into any of the caves, which is what it's really great for. Obviously you will encounter that if you go right down to the depths, and on one of the entrances you will, but overall it's not really that bad and not really too much of an issue, and the fact that it's immune to electric eel stings and jellyfish and all of that is really a godsend. And it also makes oil, which is really nice, and it also makes a cute rainbow. But before we get into number 1, I've just got a couple of honourable mentions. The Mega Chelon is a great one. The only reason why I didn't put it on this list is the tame method. Again, the Plesiosaur will be a great one. The Dunkleosteus, although not used too widely, is another pretty cool one as well, and that pretty sums it up. Let's get into number 1. In at number 1 we have the Bloodstalker, and ever since this thing came out on Gen 1, I have never used a different creature after I've tamed one of these things to use underwater. I will go on to Gen 1 or Gen 2 where you'll find Bloodstalkers, and then I'll tame them and transfer them across all of the maps which I'll be playing on Extinction at the moment. I know it doesn't have any water. I still have a Bloodstalker over though, because I like them as well just for general travel, although still a little bit rusty, but less rusty than I was in this B-roll, because this was about maybe a month or 2 ago, this B-roll in terms of age. I've improved a little bit since then, so I can actually kind of get around, but either way they're just so agile and easy to control under the water, and they can glide across the top as well. So if you want to kind of evade danger, you kind of can by just skimming over the top of it, and it really isn't that bad. And then as long as you're not just in the middle of the ocean with nothing else to grab onto, you can always just swing onto something if it becomes a little bit too dangerous and just get out of that situation. If you're in the middle of the ocean, at least these things do have a great damage stat and can pull some smaller creatures in as well to suck the life force out of them, and then that's actually kind of creepy, and they also do that to you if they get low enough health. Either way, really agile, really quick ocean mounts, and if you've ever used one in the ocean before, you just know how effective they are, and they're pretty much faster than everything else, which definitely plays to their benefit, as you can kind of get out of any danger whatsoever. Nothing which can come near you will do any significant damage to you, because you can just quickly zip away like that. If you haven't already, I really urge you to try this creature underwater, and afterwards I'm sure you'll never go back. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I hope you enjoyed it. What is your favourite underwater tame? And also, this is the last video of the year, so I hope you enjoyed 2023, and I'll see you in the next one, and I'll see you all later.